The Curses and the Covenants, a History Weaver Mystery, Book 2, by Connie Worden. Read by the author. Chapter 39. Sarah had landed herself in the Cherryton Hospital. Her mental breakdown had continued at the police station with more erratic behavior. She hadn't turned violent again, but she alternated between babbling, laughing, and crying, so we'd been told. She was transferred to the lockdown unit of the psych ward, awaiting her bail hearing, which was less than 24 hours from her arrest. It was decided that she would be released on bail after a thorough examination and possible treatment by the psychiatrist if he determined that Sarah was not dangerous and not likely to have another psychotic episode. I told Pete I wasn't going to press charges, and I wouldn't testify against her for her assault on me. So her only charges would be for the assault on him and for resisting arrest. For now. If it turned out she was involved in anything more serious, those charges would be out of my hands. Could she have been involved in Danny's death or Julia's? I felt like I'd never really known my cousin after her attack on me. I didn't know what she was capable of. I wanted to get to the bottom of it, and I felt like I had a better chance of doing that than anyone else. She may hate me, but that might make her more willing to talk to me and tell me everything she'd been holding in all these years, as much to hurt me as for any other reason. I volunteered to go pick her up from the hospital after she was cleared to go. If she was in her right mind again, I thought I'd be safe enough behind the wheel of a car with her in it. Surely she wouldn't go for me again while I was driving and risk wrecking the car and herself. I hope. I was nervous about picking her up, but I decided it had to be done anyway. My mom and Sarah's parents knew very little. She hadn't called them, so I told them what I knew, partially, leaving out my own part in it. They knew only that Sarah had experienced some kind of mental breakdown from the stress of everything she'd been through lately, and in her breakdown, she had assaulted a police officer. Then she'd been remanded to the hospital until her bail hearing. Between the three of us, we managed the bail, and I volunteered to go pick her up. I didn't want to make things any worse for my aunt and uncle. They'd been through enough lately. When I got to the hospital, Sarah wasn't in the room that the nurses' station had told me was hers. I found her in a sunny lounge overlooking the garden, which was brown and pathetic now that the November snow had melted. She was wearing a terry cloth bathrobe and slippers, and her hair was untidy and greasy. She sat on a chair by the window and looked out at the dead garden with an equally dead expression on her face. "Sarah, aren't you ready?" I asked, surprised. "Didn't they tell you I was coming to pick you up? You're free to go." "I'm not going," she said with her voice as expressionless as her face. "What do you mean? You have to. You can't stay here." "Yes, I can. I've admitted myself. As a patient. I need some time. I want to get better. I'm not well yet." "Okay, if that's what you want," I said and sank down in a chair beside her. "You don't have to stay," she said. "Can I stay for a little?" She shrugged in her usual way, flicking her hair back at the same time with a jerk of her head. "Can we talk?" "I have nothing I want to talk to you about," she said, still staring out the window. "I know, but I have things I want to talk to you about. I think it'd be good to get it all out. It might be a step on your way to healing." She shrugged again. I decided to jump right in. "Why do you hate me?" "I don't," she said, too quickly to be convincing. "You gave an Oscar-winning impression of it the other day." "Ange, come on, I was out of my head. I was having a breakdown, you know that. Do you want me to apologize? Is that what you're here for? Well, then I'm sorry. You should know that without my having to say it. It wasn't really me attacking you, that was the breakdown. It came from somewhere, though." Sarah looked me full in the face, finally. There were still traces in her expression of the raw hatred I saw on the day of the attack. "All right, fine, I'll tell you. I don't hate you, but I'm still angry with you sometimes. You hurt me. You really hurt me." I was stunned. "What do you mean? How did I hurt you?" "Deserting me in high school." I didn't. You found other friends, so I found other friends. We just grew apart, Sarah. No, I didn't, she sighed. I didn't find other friends. I tried, but they weren't really my friends. You'd always been the only friend I had all the way through school. I still don't have friends, not true ones. I always knew you didn't really want to be my friend either. So even you weren't really my friend. Danny was the only one who really knew me. He was my only true friend. I swallowed hard. I hadn't realized this was Sarah's version of events. I'm your friend again. I mean, family or forever friends, no matter what. And I don't know about your life in Cheriton, but Larry and Pete and I are all your friends in Beaver Row. Sarah scoffed. Ha! You bring them up? Larry has no time for me since you came along, and Pete only hangs out with me when I initiate something. He's not really my friend either. He's into you, too. No one bothers to look at me when the famous author is around. I almost laughed at her characterization of my appeal to men. Whatever interest they might have in me, it certainly had nothing to do with me being a famous author. How ridiculous could she be? But she didn't look ridiculous. She looked miserable. Sympathy leapt up in my heart for her, but I didn't know how to turn it into any sort of comfort. Sarah, crazy as you make me sometimes, I genuinely care about you. I love you, you goober. Don't you know that? She didn't say anything, just continued to stare hard out the window. But even from the profile view I had of her, I could see a softening in her face. I awkwardly put one arm around her and leaned my head on her shoulder. She didn't wriggle away or push it off. I decided that was some kind of progress. Well, if you don't hate me, what was all that about in the school that day? I asked her finally, after we'd sat in silence like that for a matter of minutes. I don't want to do jail time, she said. When she looked at me, there was genuine panic in her eyes. Don't worry, I'm not pressing charges. I don't really think you'll do jail time for biting Pete either. She flinched visibly at my last words. I don't mean for the assault, Ange. Well, it will all come out now, won't it? That's why I went for you that day. It was all coming out and I just lost it. What do you mean? You didn't have anything to do with Danny's or Julia's death. I don't think you did, anyway. So why would you be in trouble? What set you off? Because you asked if I'd told Julia anything about Danny being her dad. You're right, you knew it. Yes, I did. Okay, I can see that could cost you your job. That was certainly a breach of conduct, no doubt. But I'm sure it can't be an indictable offense. Why did you tell her? I just wanted someone to love me, she said, her voice almost rising to a wail. She's my niece. I wanted her to know that. I wanted us to be close, so I told her what I knew. I told her the whole story. We'd have to keep it secret or I'd be in trouble at work. But I wanted some kind of aunt-niece relationship with her. She was a little piece of Danny left behind. I nodded in silence. I could see the temptation for Sarah. But what happened? You moved in and she got all close to you. She was a lot more bonded to you than she ever was to me. I thought I might be able to help her with her issues. I thought maybe she could confide in me once she knew I was her aunt. But she seemed to turn on me. She seemed to resent what I'd told her, Sarah continued. Why, do you think? I think she was angry that I'd kept Danny's death a secret all those years. I think she wanted the truth to come out, but she'd promised me to keep the secret so I wouldn't get in trouble. Is that why you think you might go to jail for covering up a death? Sarah nodded. Do you feel like talking about that? What really happened? Danny killed himself? After he thought they'd lost the baby to adoption and then he would go to prison for kidnapping? That was the final straw? Sarah nodded again. Before that, he told me he was getting more and more depressed. He had mental issues and the drugs didn't help. He was feeling like he didn't have much to live for. Judith and me and Mom and Dad were all that were keeping him going. He would tell me that, and I worried about him. But I didn't know how to help. I just started watching him like a hawk, afraid he was going to do something to himself. Then he told me Judith and her parents moved away because she was pregnant, and that he and Judith had broken up over their disagreement about keeping the baby, and for other reasons too, probably. She broke up with him, and that destroyed him. He pleaded with her to keep the baby, but she told him she couldn't. I could see him steadily going downhill after that. He was almost completely non-interactive from that point on with anyone other than me. And then, when he came back that day after he'd returned Julia to Judith, thinking he was going to prison for kidnapping, he came and found me late that night. He didn't go into the house. He woke me up and talked to me through my bedroom window. He came to say goodbye, he said. I asked him what he meant, and he said he was in trouble, so he was going away. I was afraid of what he meant, so I got up and snuck out to follow him. I could see his flashlight to follow, and I didn't use one myself, so I was pretty sure he wouldn't see me. He didn't have a car then. He'd only been borrowing Mom and Dad's car that day, so he left the car at their house and went on foot to the old cherry barn and took off into the woods until he got to the old bridge. I wasn't close enough to stop him. I was only close enough to watch him. One solitary tear edged its way out of one brown eye and down to her chin, without her bothering to wipe it. It dripped onto her bathrobe. So, you buried him under the stones? Why? Why didn't you tell anyone? Dad was going through chemo hell just then. I just couldn't. It would have killed him. I couldn't lose them both at the same time. Your dad's a strong man, Sarah. He would have made it. Well, who knows? All I knew is that I wanted to spare them that. I thought it would be so much easier for them to think he'd just run off. At least if Danny was on drugs and living on the street, they wouldn't expect to find him. But they could at least keep the hope alive that he might come home someday. I thought I'd have to tell eventually, but the more years that went on and I kept up the lie, the less likely I was to ever tell them. What about the text messages from Danny's phone? That was easy enough. After I saw him jump and I dragged his body as far as I could out of the way and piled the stones on it. I went home and found his phone in his room. I knew he didn't have it on him because I checked for it. So I sent the text messages. I kept the phone for a while to send the later ones that I'd planned. I thought I'd make him lose his apartment and end up on the streets, so that it wouldn't be strange when we lost all trace of him. I knew people on the streets just tend to disappear out of sight. Then I chucked his phone in the river when I was done with it, so no one would find it in my room. I couldn't resist keeping the lie going by pretending I saw him years later, in East Hastings. By that time I was in so deep I didn't think I'd ever get out. And I thought maybe I'd never have to confess what I'd done. Maybe no one would ever have to know. But you told Julia where you'd hidden the body. Once I got started talking to her, it all came out. It was like she was my priest or something. I'd bottled it up too long. She must have gone to find the spot and see it for herself. She drew it in her journal. Sarah nodded. So I saw. So, it must have been you who broke into our house and cut the page out of the journal? Yes. Well, while we're at it, give me all the details. I'm curious to know everything that's happened. I'd put some of the pieces together, but there were so many left loose, and I knew Sarah was the one who could put them together for me. And she was going to, if I had anything to say about it. March 16th, 1899. Well, dear diary, I have a little girl. I won't write much, as I am very weary and in need of sleep, but I did want to record the event in my diary. A healthy baby girl, as sweet as a dew-washed rose. Oh dear, the excitement has me waxing poetic. Her precious little pink fingers and toes have me absolutely in raptures. All the pain of her birth has flown away on angel wings to hold her tiny, fragile little body in my arms and feel her soft warmth against me as I cradle her, or hear her little sighs as she sleeps, and absorb the touch of her little breath against my cheek with her on my shoulder. I can't say all fear is past. I remember how hale and hearty little Ollie was, until he was no more, and my heart clenches in abject panic in moments when I think about it happening again. But Joshua tells me it is very unlikely to happen again. Ollie's death was unexplained, and such deaths happen seldom, and not as a result of any birth defect or weakness in his parentage. I quell my fears by holding little Olivet almost constantly since her birth. Joshua tells me it isn't good for either of us, and I must put her down so both of us can rest. I write now from my bed with my little girl on my lap, and my diary beside me on the bed. I just can't bear to be parted from her. I have named her Olivet, both after her father, but also after the mount in Israel, where our dear Saviour walked with his disciples, where his feet climbed on the night before his death, and where they will return when he comes back again to earth. Olivet Evangel, after both her parents. I'll call her Olive for short.